Okay. Hey, so we are going to be talking about writing an equation. This is something that we've already done, and you can kind of follow along on pages 203 and 204. I'm not going to go through every single question that's on page 203, 204, but kind of just more the concept of what they're asking you to do. Some of this you're going to have to use a little bit of your brain power to figure out on your own, and I believe you can do it. So some key vocabulary to keep in mind before we keep going. Is we're going to be talking about an equation, right? So in an equation, I have two different things that are equal to each other, okay? The two sides of my equal sign need to be equal, right? The same value is on the left side of the equal sign as the right side of the equal sign, okay? Now, the biggest thing in terms of vocabulary to keep in mind when you're writing equations is that we need to keep in mind the context of what's happening in the problem. Okay, so we're asking ourselves what's happening, and depending on what's happening in the problem, we need to ask ourselves, what does that mean mathematically, right? So in terms of the math, what is happening? So we're actually going to start first on page 203. Okay, it should be the first page inside of your packet, and I want you to pause the video right now, and I want you to read this question to yourself. So hopefully you've paused and you've read it, okay? So it says, Kanika divides a package of sunflower seeds equally among 4 flower beds. She plants 14 seeds in each bed. Write and solve an equation to find how many seeds were in the package. So in terms of writing an equation, I'm asking myself, what's happening in this problem? Okay, I see that she's got some sunflower seeds that she's splitting up equally. Okay, so the second question, what does that mean mathematically? Well, when I look for some of those keywords, right, she's dividing it equally. Okay, those keywords mean we need to be, obviously, that's division. Dividing equally, splitting up equally is going to be division, okay? She's splitting up her package of sunflower seeds. We don't know how many sunflower seeds that is, so I'm just going to use a variable S, right? We have to use a variable to stand for some number that we don't know. So in terms of me thinking about how to write this, I know that I have some number of sunflower seeds, S, and I'm dividing them equally among 4 flower beds. So I'm dividing those seeds into 4 sunflower beds, okay? Now, it says that she plants 14 seeds in each bed. So after she divides them equally, in each of those 4 flower beds, there are going to be 14 seeds, okay? So that's how I write my equation, right? I'm thinking about the context, what's happening, maybe looking for some of those keywords to tell me, second question, what does that mean mathematically? Okay, that way I can write out my equation. Okay, so I'm not going to solve the rest of this. If you want to figure out how to solve this equation, right, I have a video for that on, that's called One-Step Equations with Multiplication and Division, right? I can show you how to actually solve that there. Now, I do want to go over another thing. So there are some easier ones that are one step. Other keywords to think about when I'm talking about listening to that context, right? So if they're asking you to maybe cut away, right? Well, when you're cutting, right, you're taking away, right? So what that means mathematically would be division. If they're saying that it doubled or tripled, right? Those would be some keywords that mean multiplication. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in terms of writing an equation from context. I'm gonna give you one that I wrote myself, okay? So this is not in your packet. You'll just need to follow along with me. It says, Mrs. Johnson needed to refill her tea mug, okay? I have been drinking tea all morning. My husband is very kind, and he makes my tea for me in the morning, especially since we've both been home a lot right now, okay? She needed to refill her tea mug. Her husband doubled the amount of tea in her cup, and then Mrs. Johnson added 2 ounces. All right, so I was already drinking some tea. There was a little bit in it, and I wanted some more, right? So he doubled the amount of tea that was in my mug, and then I added 2 ounces of milk to it. Okay, and that, when I was finished, I had 12 ounces of liquid in my mug. Okay, so I want to know how much tea was in my mug before it got refilled. Okay, so This one is a little bit trickier, and you're gonna see that on page 204, there are some questions, specifically 6, 7, and 8 are a lot like this question I'm going through right now, and they're harder than what we've done in class. So that's why I wanted to go over one similar to it. Okay, so for example, first of all, I know that I had some amount of tea already in my mug, right? But I don't know how much that is. So I'm going to use a variable t, this amount of tea right here that we don't know. I'm going to use a lowercase t for my variable. Okay, so I've got some amount of tea in my mug that I'm going to use the letter t to help us out, okay? And then my husband doubled it, right? My husband doubled the amount of tea that was already in my mug. We know that doubled means that I am multiplying by 2. So as I'm breaking this down, mathematically, I know that I multiply the amount of tea times 2, okay? But that's not it, okay? This is where it gets a little bit trickier, because now there's actually 2 things that are happening. I doubled the amount of tea in my mug, and if we keep reading, it says, then Miss Johnson added 2 ounces of milk, okay? So after that, since I added 2 ounces of milk, right, that word added, I know means that I need to add 2, right? After I doubled the amount of tea, then I added 2 more ounces of milk. When that was all finished, it ended, all of that gave me 12 ounces of liquid, okay? So that was my writing my equation. I took each part, right? And so I'm thinking, what did I do to the variable, right? I figured out what is my variable. Well, it's the amount of tea that was already in my mug. And then what am I doing to it, okay? What am I doing? I doubled the amount. What does that mean mathematically? Multiply by 2. Am I doing anything else to it? Yeah, I added 2 ounces, okay? So what does that mean mathematically? I'm adding 2. Okay, so there's actually 2 things that are happening here, and I am going to show you how to solve this because we haven't so far. Same way that we solve equations if you watched my other 2 videos, except now there are 2 different operations. Okay, I want to still isolate my variable t. Okay, so I see t is being multiplied by 2 and I'm adding 2. Well, the first thing I'm always going to do is I want to move any of that addition or subtraction out of the way first, okay? So I'm going to say, all right, what's happening? What operation? Well, I see I'm adding 2. So the inverse operation would be to subtract 2, which I need to do to both sides. Plus 2 minus 2 makes a 0. So now on this side, I have 2t plus 0, or just 2t, is equal to 12 minus 2 is 10, okay? Now see, t is not alone by itself yet. I still need to finish isolating it. So I'm going to say, what operation is happening? What operation do I see? I see multiplication. Secondly, what is the inverse operation? I need to divide by 2. The inverse operation is division. What I do to one side, to keep it balanced, I do to the other side. 2 divided by 2 makes a 1. So I'm left with just t. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my solution is t equals 5. But what this really means is that how much tea was in her mug before it was refilled? Mrs. Johnson had 5, what did I say, ounces of tea in her mug. Okay, so that is what is happening. This is very similar to 6, 7, and 8, so try those on your own. The answer key is on the Shelby County Schools website, and I will also be uploading the answer key at the end of the week, so if you want to check those later, you can. Put your questions in the comments, and I will be sure to answer those.